Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today, the 26th of July, 2024, is opening day of the Paris Olympic Games. The ancient Greeks gave, gave humanity democracy, the government of the people, for the people, by the people. And the other thing they gave humanity is the Olympic Games. And they've become a feature on the world calendar. Every 4 years, there's been the Olympic Games. Benjamin, welcome to the program.
Good day to you and good day to all viewers.
What, in your opinion, are the two common features that the Olympic Games and democracy have?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is fair play. You know, uh, the ability to enjoy both, democracy and the games in in the term where we say, in our native language, Ubuntu. You know, in humanity, celebrating humanity. You know, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. The togetherness, fair play.
I agree. In my view, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the competitiveness in that kind of environment where the best will win at the end of the day. As it's important in that it inspires people to um, strive to get better. You if you're going to win the end of the day, you've got to be the best. You've got to be at your best, and therefore, then you have got to train to be at your best. Whereas if you were to run that race alone, no competition, you know you're going to win it. There's nobody pushing you to achieve what you could have achieved. But more significantly, particularly when it comes to democracy, because, like I said, democracy at the beginning is the government of the people, by the people, for the people. You will assume leadership and you will not be the best. And the whole society will only pay for it. So, by allowing this Olympic spirit that people should compete and the best, may the best win, it has allowed the best to emerge and to rule. And that has been a magnificent benefit to society, to democratic nations at large.
I agree with you. There's that, spirit or the fulfillment of excellence to say, I have prevailed, in all fairness, where you can hold your head up and people would actually come and congratulate you in the spirit of fairness to say you have like, accomplished, you have beaten the others in fairness, so I think that is one thing also that is a factor for both. you know Democracy allows you to to be in a fair environment, equal opportunities. You know, this is what you are going after. May the best man win, and at the end of the day, you know, the true, you know, winner emerges, and people are happy, people accept, the outcome of that, and life moves on. The same, with the Olympics. You win, you get all the merits and acknowledgement, and at the end of the day, you're proud of it yourself. So, these are all, I think, some of the common traits between, both democracy and the Olympics.
Well, one of the things that also is very strictly observed in the Olympic Games is the rules. The rules are that you should do A, B, C, D. And there are officials who see to it that everybody plays by the rules. If you step out of sight um, or try to short circuit the rules, there have been a lot of Olympic um, competitors who have been punished because of that. In fact, during the Olympic Games, the team players, one of the things they're very strict on is drugs, performance enhancing drugs. Uh, Everybody knows which are the substances that are considered to be performance enhancing, and those are banned. You must It must be purely by merit, no cheating. And when we look at democracy, that would be no rigging. So some of our friends in Zimbabwe who rigged last year's elections will find they would have been disqualified before they assumed the presidency. So, you cannot cheat. You have got to play by the rules. And these are the rules. And in this particular case, when you're talking of democracy, you must have free, fair, and credible elections. You must have um, a voters' roll that has been um, audited by everyone. There should be no intimidation of the voters, etc., etc. Those are the rules, and this is what I think. In many ways, it's not surprising that the Greeks came up with the Olympic Games because they already embraced the spirit of competition as one of the ways of pushing people to excel.
One thing about competition is that it it creates awareness. It makes you better. It makes you want to get better. To not just to win, but to better yourself. It challenges you. It motivates you. So in the absence, like you said, of these rules, to say, you're going to be performing, or you're going to be, competing under such rules. And these rules, like you said, are very, very strict. You must adhere to them at every given moment in time. And it starts before you even get to the Olympics, you know, when they start testing you to see how it is. This is exactly like how, our elections are supposed to be. You get tested before, when they send observer missions, to come and see how the environment is pre-election, during election and post-election. And from there, that is where you find out, have you been, you know, observing the rules? And like you were laughing and saying, if it was in Zimbabwe, I believe they would not have even been at the Olympics, if it was like that for any election. Because I mean, like, all the rules, I believe that the observer mission, the SADC observer mission report, clearly stated that we fell short of even our domestic rules, yet alone the international. So, which means clearly there was no fairness. Clearly there was no spirit of competitiveness. It was already, a loaded dice. Everybody everybody had an outcome already before the whole thing, the Olympic even started. Funny enough, some foolish guys, thought that it doesn't really matter even if they have performance, drugs. They decided to compete, and then they lost. But then in that foolishness, I mean, you cannot blame anybody now because this is the outcome that has come out. But in a normal environment, in a normal situation, the 2023 elections should not have happened because there was no fairness. There was no spirit of fair competitiveness. You know, so it shouldn't have been an event in the first place. That's what I think.
I think the other important thing to underline here is that having made the rules, it is important that you should adhere to those rules. It is important, regardless. I think what we tend to have in our situation in Zimbabwe is, particularly when it comes to elections, some people seem to believe that rules are there, and you only consider them if you have lost. That's when you complain. And hence the reason why we have this almost regular thing, regular as clockwork, where the opposition participates in flawed elections, claiming that they've come up with strategies of stopping ZANU-PF rigging the elections. But the minute they lose the elections, all of a sudden they seem to wake up to the reality that the elections were not free, fair, and credible. And so they start complaining that the elections were rigged. Why did you participate when you knew the process was flawed? And in some cases, as happened last year, those areas where the opposition have won, they claim that those areas are liberated zones, as if to say, while the rest of the country, the rules were not observed, in those liberated zones, the rules were observed. It's, of course, nonsense. For instance, there was no verified voters roll for the whole country, and not just the urban, the rural areas where the opposition lost. And international observers judge the election on the basis of the process, not the result, and work backwards. And that, unfortunately, is one of the problems we have. So we have had situations here where the opposition participate in elections, flawed elections. When they realize they've lost, they've always complained that the elections were rigged. Why did you participate? More so, their followers, the opposition leaders themselves, have participated in these flawed elections out of greed. They know that ZANU-PF is giving away a few gravy train seats, and they've been willing to participate in flawed elections as long as they get the win those few gravy train seats. It's the ordinary person. You participate in a flawed process, then you cannot complain afterwards. The process is flawed. And that is precisely the problem we have had again and again in Zimbabwe. The people have failed to see that the process is flawed. They participated only to give ZANU-PF political legitimacy. And I think this problem is going to happen again in 2028 when we will have our next elections. At the rate at which we are going, it will not be surprising at all that Chamisa should be able to con his followers into believing they can win the 2028 elections without reforms. To participate in the flawed process. Only when the results come out would then claim once again that the election were rigged. I think this is the lack of discipline, of focus. Even if you are convinced and you know that your particular party is going to win, the spirit of the Olympic Games is that you want the process to be fair to all the competitors. All the competitors. And you only judge it on that basis. And even if your own candidate wins, if the process was not fair, then it should be condemned. If your own fellow countryman or woman wins in the Olympic Games, and you find that they had been taking some performance-enhancing drugs, for instance, then they should be disqualified. You should be the first one to say, no, if you broke the rules, then you must be disqualified. We want a real champion who wins because the process, in a free, fair process that everyone can see was free, fair, and credible.
You know, I would put it this way. You know, we can blame the person that does not adhere to rules and regulations of either, you know, sports, uh, political, or, you know, just general rules, our day-to-day rules that we have in wherever different places, organizations. You know, we blame that person. Then I think we should equally blame a person that knows that there are supposed to be rules, and without those rules they're going to get taken advantage of, but insist that, you know, don't worry about me, this time, even if there are rules or no rules, I will win regardless. That is a clear cut message to say, you know what, I don't need your help, I myself will win this with or without the rules. Then, when you fail or when you lose, you do not have that right to now come and hold or push those that warned you before to say, guy, or, you know, this person here that you want to, you know, go up against, he he is not following the rules. If it's in the Olympics, he's taking performance enhancing drug. Do not compete with him. You know, let us do what needs to be done and disqualify him, right? And then you shun that advice. I think that is the most despicable thing. Now, where you start blaming somebody for your own stupidity, you know, for years, Triple C MDC, whether it was Chamisa that was in leadership then or Changirai or whoever, but they were all together. They have always insisted going up a ZANU PF that does not adhere to any rules or regulations, including, and the SADC report said, including the domestic, our own rules. they do not follow, but they insist each and every time that they will win. And like you said, come 2028, this is just a calm before the storm. They know they don't have any answers for you because they promised you lies, right? Once you have forgotten and once you have gone through, the long period with ZANU-PF doing what ZANU-PF does best, which is destroy, you will need them and they will come back. Today we're reading of a story where Welshman Nunes says the problem, we have a weak opposition. We have a weak team. How can the team be weak when 3 days ago you were united and still went up and lost? It's. I think people don't ask them the right question. If they don't have anything to say that you know that is fruitful or that is meaningful, I think they should shut up. Because honestly, just 2 days ago, you were united, but you were warned. Now you're saying it's weakness. I don't buy into that. I'm very, very sorry, but I think both are to blame for engaging in something that is no spirit of fairness.
Well, I would like to underline that point, that the opposition, MDC, CCC, have been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that by participating, they'll give ZANU-PF legitimacy. They've gone ahead because they also knew that ZANU-PF was giving away a few gravy train seats, and this they found irresistible. This is a quotation from David Coulthard's book that I'm just showing at the bottom of the screen there, where he is admitting that the process is flawed, that the logical thing should have been to withdraw, but him and his colleagues could not, because they realized that if they withdraw, the other side will participate and win the gravy train seats. So they've been participating in flawed elections out of greed. The main problem we have here is that the ordinary people have not opened their eyes to see that the MDC, CCC have sold out. They have their own agenda now. It has nothing to do with the people's agenda, implementing reforms so that we have free, fair, and credible elections. I'd just like to close by playing a video clip of the SADC Election Observer Mission chairperson, Dr. Navis Mumba, advising Zimbabweans on what to do to make sure that 2028 is not a repeat of the 2023.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, let me be clear that the changing of any dynamic or situation in any of our African countries is a preserve of the citizens of that country, in this case, the Zimbabwean people. An election observation team goes there to support the process by observing and being able to release a statement of our observations that, for instance, in Zimbabwe, we raised several issues of transparency and also the independence of the Electoral Commission and things which happen in many other countries, But at the end of the day, once we produce the report and make it available to the Zimbabwean authorities and eventually to the Zimbabwean people, it really remains the preserve of the Zimbabwean people to fight for the freedoms that they need themselves and to correct those issues that have been observed. The reason why we have multiple observation missions is to ensure that, there is a comparison, taking place between the SADC report and the European Union report, the African Union report, and then they can see that those issues that repeat themselves in all these reports, it's up to the Zimbabwean people. And this is where I appeal to all political leaders, not only in Zimbabwe, especially the elections that are coming in Mozambique, that are coming in South Africa, in DRC. We have to make up our minds that, look, at the end of the day, once the people in the country are given an opportunity to monitor the elections, because they also monitor, it starts not during the day of the elections. They must make sure that the constitutional lacunas that can affect a good election are dealt with months before the election. And they must fight to ensure that there's a level playing field. They should never wait for the time when the election is taking place. They must also insist that the electoral commissions and the governments in those countries abide by international norms in holding democratic elections. And this fight must be more vicious before the election comes.
Well, there you have it. I don't think you could put it any more emphatically. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
So, in closing, I would just want to answer the question that has been posed there to say, democracy is a joke. European countries they should ditch the big lie called democracy. So, it depends how you see democracy. Not everybody is going to agree to say, a process has been, democratic. Not everybody. There are those people. I mean, look, there's a guy called Trump. He said that the elections that happened in America were a sham. So you do get those people, right? But if you are going to call democracy in Europe a lie, then what are you going to call democracy in Zimbabwe? That is my question that I would ask, Henry, to say, what would you call democracy in Zimbabwe if you call the European one a lie? Nobody is going to get happy with any outcome. It's impossible to please everybody. But there are rules that have been set. You cannot go breaking all of them. I mean, you read or you heard the SADC report when it came to the issue of Zimbabwe. Not only did they fail the international rules and laws, they failed to meet the ones that are at home. So if you are going to continue saying that, in European countries, democracy is a lie, then what do you say about democracy in Zimbabwe? What would you call it? That would be my question, and I would leave him maybe for another day. But thank you for your comment, though.
Well, I think in this, my answer to Henry actually is very simple. What is wrong with democracy insofar as it says every Zimbabwean should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country? What is wrong with that? I think the main problem with some people is that they've been brainwashed into rejecting anything from the West or former colonizers. And in this particular case, you reject it without even thinking about it. I say brainwashed because the leaders who have embraced West Eastern mentality of one party state, one party dictatorship mentality, they have wanted it and reject the West because they did not want to have any competition This is exactly what we're talking about here. They don't want competition. They think they have got all the solutions and they should be allowed to rule. And no one should be able to have any meaningful say in it. That is against the spirit of the Olympic Games. That is why we're talking about at the beginning, and we have maintained the picture of the Olympic Games and compared it to democracy. They are the only ones who are competent to rule. That is fundamentally wrong. Whether it comes from the east or the west or the south or the north, it doesn't matter. It is wrong. And the idea that everyone should have a meaningful say in the governance of the country makes sense. And we should not reject it just because the West is the ideology that the West is using. So in this particular case, I think is to miss the point completely. And I don't know which Pluto you're talking about there, because the Pluto I think you want to talk about is of the modern, or rather the ancient Greeks. And he, of all people, we would have embraced democracy because he knew it was the one at the very foundation of why Greece had its golden age. They did not only excel in good governance, Olympic Games, they also excelled in arts and many other fields, engineering and so forth. A lot of the good things that came out from ancient Greece came out during that period, which mankind has inherited. I don't know this article you are referring to, but from the outside, you can see immediately that it really doesn't make any sense at all. The reason why Zimbabwe is a failed state is that we've been stuck with a regime that is corrupt and incompetent, but it's been rigging elections to stay in power. In other ways, it wasn't competing for power in an open and honest way, but imposing itself on the people. And their failure has not been addressed. We've been stuck with it. We've been stuck with buffoons. As much as Mnangagwa will claim that he's going to meet his target of 2030, Vision 2030, everybody with any eyes at all can see that the economy is in a mess. It's getting worse and worse by the day. It's now 7 years since he took over power, and there's no sign of economic recovery. And to keep on thinking that he's going to meet his target is, to say the least, naive. Thank you very much, Benjamin. And for those who were able to join us tonight, thank you again for joining us. And have a good night.
Thank you. Good evening to you all.
And maybe in closing, we'd just like to wish all the Zimbabwean athletes all the very best. And let's hope they will come out winners with well-deserved accolades. And even if they do not come up with any medals, we hope that the experience will be inspirational to them, and can only hope to some of our leaders who, from social media reports, they are there in big numbers. Let's hope they'll learn something useful for a change. Again, thank you very much to the listeners for being with us tonight, and have a good evening.